Awesome. All right. Excited to be here today. We're going to be talking about attack surface management and kind of how defenders often see it, and then also how attackers see it. So we'll go over that. We'll also talk about some specific attack vectors, as well as defensive opportunities and ways that we can improve our security posture. About me real quick, I'm the technical director of offensive operations at BreakPoint Labs. We have an offensive side of the house and a defensive side, so I've also had the opportunity to work with some really good defenders and learn from them. I think there's a lot of opportunities out there for collaboration between the red team and blue team sides we're kind of missing out on, so I'm hoping to kind of give some of my attacker perspective today and introduce some more of that collaboration. I also act as a red team operator for one of 12 DoD certified red teams. Our team specifically is tasked with assessing and securing OT assets and critical infrastructure. So I've had the opportunity to work on everything from highly secure Pentagon DoD military networks to national healthcare infrastructure through the Department of Health and Human Services, all the way down to local city, county government infrastructure and utilities. And I see common patterns repeated, common mistakes, and I'm pulling from some of that experience today in this presentation. One important caveat before we get started, make sure you know your environment. Every organization is going to be different, have a different history, different current state, different possibilities, capabilities moving forward. If you understand your organization, you understand how to defend it, and then you can also apply a little bit of attacker mindset to it. That's how you're going to be able to prioritize your security improvements, because we can't fix everything, right? You have to be able to prioritize that, use the funding that you have, the people that you have, and use that to improve your security. I'm also going to generalize a little bit today, so make sure that you're taking what I say and applying it to your organizations or the organizations you work with. I'm also going to talk about the difference between attackers and defenders. I am not in any way implying that defenders are dumb, attackers are better, anything like that. Just different skill sets, different experience, different training. So keep that in mind. I'm not trying to insult any defenders out there. All right, so let's talk about traditional OT attack surface. Many of you have probably heard the idea of turtles all the way down. Essentially, it goes, the Earth is sitting on the back of a turtle, which is on the back of a slightly bigger turtle, which is on the back of a slightly bigger one. And if you ask, when do the turtles end? The answer is turtles all the way down. It's a mythological concept, can be used for like philosophical discussion. We're going to squint a little bit and use it to look at the attack layers, attack surface layers that we look at as attackers. I do not recommend moving away from the Purdue model to go to the turtle model, but I think this is a good analogy. I like how it can shows how attackers approach things. So we've got our external assets. Anyone in the world can touch our external assets, right? Underneath that, we've got our IT network. Then we've got our OT network, our SCADA assets, RTUs, PLCs, all those fun acronyms. And then at the bottom, we've got our physical assets, operational technology. There's always some interaction with the physical world, something you're protecting, whether it's power, water, healthcare, transportation infrastructure, all kinds of things you could be protecting, but there's always something physical, which is kind of hard because as cyber people, we want to protect the digital assets, but we got to remember that there's the physical side of things as well with OT. And we've got this attacker, this alligator is going to act as our attacker today. He can reach those external assets, but he wants to get to everything down there, and he's trying to find ways to get to all these other turtles. As defenders, we set up perimeter defenses, and we set up IT/OT segmentation. And these are often the two biggest focuses for defenses, which they should be. We all know that people shouldn't be able to get into your internal environments. Once they do, you have to separate those OT assets as well. Make sure they can't just jump over and cause any harm, unintentional or intentional there. Also throw phishing in here. Again, a well-known thing. We're not going to talk about any of these too much because people know people are trying to phish. An attacker can't get through your external assets. He thinks, okay, I'll use social engineering, try to bypass those, get directly to your IT network. Again, we all have phishing defenses. We all have phishing training. It's not a new thing. So this is what defenders usually see, and this is a lot of organizations. This is where it stops. Kind of when they think of attack surface, they think, I need to protect from the outside internet. I need to protect against phishing. I need to have that segmentation between my IT and my OT networks. What do attackers look at? This is what we see. As defenses have gotten better, attackers evolve, become more creative. And these are the things we're going to touch on a little bit today. We got supply chain attacks, we've got physical compromise, insider threats, and of course, nation state sophistication in 0 days. These are all very difficult to defend against, very complex. There's a lot of different possibilities here. And the extra scary thing is, if you look at all the arrows, if someone's coming through external assets or phishing, they're going to land in your IT network, right? You're still going to have some segmentation there. But with these types of attacks, you don't know where an attacker is going to come in, where that initial access is going to be. If you have the best perimeter defense in the world, but you have an insider threat who has direct access to your SCADA assets, your physical assets, your defenses are not really going to help there. Same with supply chain. We know that's been a big thing in the news lately. The supply chain attacks, they could go land anywhere in your network and you don't know where they're going to come in. Could be hardware, could be software, could be updates, could be vendors. I'm going to be a little hard on vendors today. Not all vendors are bad, but it is a very common way that OT environments get compromised is through vendors. Because you've got dozens or hundreds of vendors, you're providing them all some kind of trust, some kind of privileges within your environment. And an attacker can go after the weakest link there and then inherit that trust. And again, that initial access, it could be anywhere. You don't know exactly where it's going to be. I'm sure we're not going to spend much time on the supply chain attacks. There's been a lot of big ones in the news. I'm sure no one wants to hear them mentioned ever again. But it's a very common problem that's not going away and it's something we have to be prepared for. Physical compromise. As an authorized attacker, I'm not going to go to prison if I get caught. I love doing physical compromises because one, it's just exciting to get into a place you're not supposed to be in, right? But two, it's often way easier than you would expect. As it can be very, very eye-opening, especially with OT. With SCADA, you have a lot of remote sites often, and those can be very, very easy to get into and compromise. And we'll talk about an example in a minute. But they're very hard to defend, right? So attackers, they're going to try and get, if they can get physical proximity, they're going to try to get to exposed network ports, get to any devices they can reach, get their own devices or machines onto the network. And they'll try to bypass any defenses that you have in place. And oftentimes those are pretty minimal. It'll be the bare minimum, and attackers can bypass them pretty easily. USBs, I think everyone knows not to plug in USBs. Not a new thing, but attackers have evolved again there. I was just hearing about the other day about a company that was receiving free samples of USB charging cables in the mail. And luckily they're smart enough not to plug them in because they were backdoored. But pretty much anything that has a USB plug can be weaponized at this point. Someone's probably weaponized everything at this point. One of my favorite attacks is also wireless hit attacks. If anyone knows about mouse jacking or the Logitacker attacks, basically using human input devices, wireless mice, wireless keyboards, and the tiny little dongles that come with them. You can weaponize those really easy. It's going to get past USB blocking because it's not loading a drive or anything, but it provides a great way to gain initial access, but also maintain access to very secure, even air-gapped networks. I could give a whole talk on that. It's one of my favorite things, and it's something that a lot of people overlook. All right, so here's an example. So I was doing an assessment for a water utility, and we went out to one of their remote sites to do a physical security walkthrough. So the security manager took us out there and he said, okay, we think we're pretty secure. We can't man this location or anything, but we've done our best to make sure it's secure. So we said, okay, we've got these 3 locks over here. There's a fence around the whole thing. There's a gate for vehicles and it's got 3 locks on it. We've got 3 different entities that need to have access to this facility. So they each have their own lock and key, a little bit of separation of privileges. It's a good idea in theory. He said we also have locks on the water tower, both at the bottom to get access to the ladder to go up, as well as at the top to get access to the water itself. The front door of this management facility is always locked. There's a camera there as well. And so we think we're pretty secure. We're not too worried about someone breaking in here. And so that's what he saw as a defender. He saw all these strengths and defenses in place. But attackers, this is what we see. So those 3 locks, that gives us 3 chances to pick a lock, and any one of those is going to open that gate. They were all master padlocks, just default. You pick them up at the store for $10. Those take for an amateur lock picker, it takes about 30 seconds to get through. Same with the front door lock, pretty basic lock, took about 30 seconds to pick. If I'm worried about getting on camera, there was a huge gap under the fence an adult could easily slide under. The fence itself was only about 7 feet tall, could have climbed over. There's no barbed wire or anything up top. There's even a brick wall about 5 feet tall right next to it, so I could climb up there, hop down the other side, really easy to get in. Once I got inside, the locks on the water tower were again just default master padlocks would have taken 30 seconds to pick, except they weren't even locked. So they were doing absolutely nothing. Same with the back door, completely unlocked. And what do you know? I walk inside, there's a PLC cabinet, a router. I plug my laptop into the router. And not only do I have access to all the digital assets there, I had a connection back to the main OT environment. Within a minute or two, an attacker they could gain access to physically to the water to tamper with that. And they can get access to not just the digital stuff here, but everything back in the main environment. And this is unfortunately pretty common. Getting to a remote site, and within a minute or two, you have access to everything there, everything, connections back to the main environment or to other remote sites. It's real easy for attackers to get in there and compromise them. I mean, it's hard to defend these places, right? Because you don't have the funding to man it 24/7. Can't have armed guards out there. So what do you do here? A lot of times with physical security, it's about deterrence. So if I see a master padlock, I know it's going to take me about 30 seconds to pick. I'm probably going to go for it. If I see an actionable lock, those are pretty secure. They take a good lock picker is probably going to take like 10 or 15 minutes at least. I'm not an amazing lock picker. So even a good lock picker, do they want to be standing out there for 10 or 15 minutes picking a lock in view of anyone passing by? Probably not. So that's an easy and inexpensive upgrade. They could, update all these locks, and that's going to deter an attacker from trying to pick them. The gap under the fence, there's no excuse for that. So that needs to be fixed. But the fence itself, put some barbed wire up top. Again, like if I'm very determined, I can get over that. But do I really want to risk it? If I see that barbed wire, I'm probably less inclined to actually try to hop over that fence. Cameras, one camera, it's easy to get past. If there were dozens of cameras out there, even if I don't think anyone's watching those feeds, I'm a little more hesitant to go in there because I don't want to leave any evidence, right? In this case, they didn't have any lighting out there either. So I see all those cameras, I think, okay, I'm just going to wait until it's dark, then I'll go and they won't see anything. So if you combine new, harder to pick locks, some barbed wire on the fence, more cameras, better lighting, that's a lot of deterrence. I'm probably going to go look at another site. I'm probably just going to skip this one unless I'm really, really determined to get in there. And you can obviously, if you have the funding, you can do a lot more. You can have all kinds of sensors, alarms. Port security was another thing they needed to have there that wasn't in place. But something like that is going to give you an early warning system if someone does get into a remote site. So there's a lot of ways to upgrade this that isn't going straight to armed guards. Trying to deter people, trying to get some early warning system set up for these remote sites. So there is stuff that can be done. Insider threats. This is another one that's very difficult to protect against, and it's difficult to even think if you have training for insider threats. It's difficult to keep that training internalized and keep it in your mind, because I'm like, I got my coworker Zach. He's a good friend. He's a good employee. He's a nice guy. If I see an insider threat warning, something that he does, am I just going to write it off and be like, oh no, I know Zach. He's a good guy. Lots of times that's what happens. But I think a good way to think of it is, because it could be anyone, right? It could be anyone in the organization, could be anyone with some kind of insider access, your vendors, your customers. You never know where it's going to come from. And a lot of these people you trust, you have relationships with. So I think a good way to think of it is it's not always intentional. Someone could be tricked into doing something bad. Someone could be forced into doing it, blackmailed, threatened. That's not a happy thought by any means, but I find that easier to keep in my mind. It's kind of that middle ground between I'm just going to ignore any insider threat warnings and I'm going to be paranoid about everyone and think they're all out to get me. But in the middle, you could think, I trust these people, but also they could be being manipulated or forced into doing something bad. So I am going to watch out for those early warning signs of an insider threat. And then last, but definitely not least, we've got nation state sophistication in 0 days. Sometimes life just isn't fair. You do everything right, everything's secure, up to date, and you still get popped by a 0 day. A nation state finds a way to get in. They're very resourceful. They have lots of capabilities, lots of resources, and they have lots of time too. They can keep attacking and attacking and attacking until they get in. And sometimes there's just nothing you can do about that, which is kind of hard to accept as defenders, because we want to protect our organization. We want them to be secure. We want to do everything we can. And then there's this thing out here that's like, it's like you don't know what you don't know. There could be stuff out there that can get you tomorrow, and there's nothing you can do about it. All right. So attack surface all the way down. It's not just the external assets. Attackers can come in at any layer of the environment. They can come in with any kind of privileges. As defenders, you don't know where they're going to come in. So there's no silver bullet area to place defenses. So what can be done? Defense in depth, I promise this is not just a cop-out answer. I know you've heard it a million times. You're going to hear it a million more times. But especially in OT networks, defense in depth seems to be ignored a lot. There are strong defenses on the IT side of things. I get into the OT side and it's just, there's nothing. There's window defender that hadn't been updated. Lots of Windows 7 boxes, no monitor. It's just ignore. People expect, you're not going to get into the OT, right? Because you got that IT-OT segmentation. Well, all these attacks are going straight to OT now, and there's no defenses in place. So at every single layer, you need defenses, you need monitoring, you need alerting, you need incident response plans. If someone gets in here, what's going to happen next? Part of this is knowing what you have, where you have it, and how it's secured. Think about supply chain attacks. Think about a vendor that you have. If you heard tomorrow that that vendor got compromised, are you going to be like, okay, I know I have their software here, here, and here. Let's go secure it, double check it. Or are you going to be like, I know we have a contract with them. I know we have some of their stuff somewhere. I don't really know where it is. Now I'm going to have this time going and tracking that down. So knowing your environment, luckily OT, one of the good things about it never changing is that sometimes it could be easier to track what you have if you put that effort in and make sure you're paying attention. Never assume that something is secure. We like to use the term assumed breach in our offense security assessments. You think you have this very, very secure part of your network, but if someone got in, if you assume that it's been breached, what happens next? Is it game over, or do you have chances to catch them, chances to stop them from laterally moving, doing something malicious, and someone gets in when you don't expect them to? Defense in depth also helps you lose less sleep over 0 days in those unknowns, those nation state level actors, because you know that you may not be able to stop them from getting initial access. Do everything you can, like lose sleep over the basics. If you're not doing the basic stuff, I give you permission to lose sleep over that. But if you're doing everything you can anyways, you also know, hey, I've got these other defenses in place. I can protect them. I can keep them out. I can keep them from getting to these other parts of the network, whatever it may be. That defense in depth is going to help with your mental state as well. Security assessments. Obviously, I do security assessments for a living. There are plenty of companies that do. Some are really good. Some are a complete ripoff. A lot are in between. I think we do a good job of trying to provide value and drive improvement, but I'm not going to say you have to hire an external team to do this. You can do these internally, especially when you don't have funding. Try to make sure that you have someone who's trained on attacking, though. That attacker mindset, like we saw with the physical example, defenders look at things a certain way. They often look at the strengths. Attackers often look for gaps. They look for weaknesses. So if you just send defenders to do an assessment without any attacker training, they're going to look at it like defenders, which they're already doing anyways. If they do have some attacker training, though, they can say, okay, where's the gaps? Where's the weaknesses? And they'll be able to find those for you. You can be creative with these assessments too. It doesn't always have to just fit under a specific label of this is a penetration test, this is a red team. You can test whatever you have, whatever you're concerned about. You can say, I have RFID controls that have been around a long time. I'm concerned that they're out of date. Maybe you have someone who specializes in it or someone who's interested in attacking those. Get them a little bit of training, a little bit of time to research. They can go attack those and try and figure out if you are secure, if you need to do some upgrades. It can also be a good way to get funding too. Like RFID controls are expensive to upgrade. If an IT person goes to get some funding and says, I need funding to do this, they're going to say, no, we don't have the money to this, right now. But if a third party comes in and says, hey, we just made a mockery of your access control system, they're going to be like, oh, here's some money, go upgrade it. Often these can also be cooperative. I think a lot of times people think of like, hey, I need you to come in here and be a red team unannounced, emulate Volt Typhoon and do what you can do. But sometimes it's better to have a cooperative assessment. One, for collaboration, the blue team and the red team can work together and kind of learn from each other. And two, just for efficiency and cost efficiency. I could spend, hours and hours attacking your firewall externally, or I could spend 10 minutes working, sit down with your network engineer, look at your firewall rules, and you'll get the same result there. So try to be cooperative if you can. You can get a lot of benefit out of that. Training, we don't need to spend too much time on this. Everyone hates training. I hate training. You hate training. We all have to do training now. It is important. That awareness is very important. If someone comes away from your insider threat training and they're like, man, that insider threat training was terrible. You know, they have insider threat in their lingo now. They're aware of what it is. That's better than nothing. But trying to make it as simple, consistent as possible, trying to make it specific to your organization as well. And I think explaining the impact, saying, okay, this is our organization, these are our threats, this is the impact if this happens, that makes people internalize it a little better. And then finally, validation. Policies and procedures are very important. I don't want to talk bad about them, but also they're only on paper. Attackers are not attacking paper. They're attacking your actual environment. I've seen a lot of places where they're like, oh, I'm super compliant, I'm meeting all these metrics, I'm doing all this stuff. And then I go into the actual environment and it doesn't matter at all. They have terrible security. So make sure you're not trusting policies and procedures to protect you. They need some kind of validation to ensure you're still in that secure state. Also remember that things change. Just because you were secure yesterday doesn't mean you're going to be secure today. A few areas I see this pretty often is privileges. If you're the one granting privileges, think about managing privileges. Think about like the ratio of how many privileges are you granting versus how many privileges are you taking away. Usually most organizations have some privilege debt where they're granting and granting and granting. They never take those privileges away when they're not needed. So make sure you're reverting back to that principle of least privilege wherever possible. Vendors, again, not all vendors are bad, but a lot of times they cause issues and security issues. Are your vendors meeting your current security standards, or are they meeting the security standards you had in 2006 when they started with you? Port security, we already talked about that a little bit, but ports get opened up all the time for management, for testing, for moving things around. They don't get closed. Your documentation says, hey, all these ports are closed. We have port security. And then I go in and plug into any port I want and can get access to your network. Patching processes. Everyone has secure patching processes. A lot of people don't follow them. Just make sure you're following those. Physical security, we've already gone over, and then wireless technologies as well. Those go out of date pretty fast. Every few years, you're going to want to upgrade, RFID, radio communications, or at least verify that what you have hasn't been broken. If you have RFID that's been around for 10 plus years, I can almost guarantee that those protocols are broken and it's not really protecting you like you think it is. All right, so summarize, defense in depth, most important thing, especially within the OT environment itself. Add on top of that security assessments, training, and validation, and that's a good formula to actually have a secure posture. True attack surface is everything. To an attacker, it's attack surface all the way down. We don't have to come through external assets. We don't have to hop over IT/OT segmentation, especially those nation state actors. They find other ways in that are going to go directly into those OT environments. So you have to have that defense in depth and make sure that you have more than just those perimeter defenses. Make sure you're assessing your true attack surface, use an attacker mindset and think, how would an attacker come at me? What are they going to go after? Where am I vulnerable there? That'll help you prioritize. Remember that assume breach is your friend. Have that what happens next mindset. Someone gets initial access, what happens next? Someone jumps into this secure part of your network, what happens next? Is there more that you can do to protect yourself? And then just in general, become a fan of proactive security. Otherwise, it's going to be the attackers, that the actual attackers, the adversaries that come in and show you where your issues are. If you find them first, though, they aren't going to be able to get in or they aren't going to be able to move around, and you're going to be able to actually protect your organization. And that's it. I don't know if we have any time for questions, but if anyone does have questions, feel free to reach out to me or grab me in the hall or whatever.
That's right.
Awesome. Thank you.